Hey, this is five-time All-Star Andrew McCutcheon, and you're watching BT Talks Baseball. Take it away, Brett.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back inside BT Talks Baseball. I want to thank Andrew McCutcheon for that great introduction. I'm so excited for today's show because I'm going to be joined by one of the best-known and most respected voices in New York sports radio, Don La Greca. Let's get right to it. Don, thank you so much for joining me right here on BT Talks Baseball.
Oh, my pleasure.
And Don, before we even get started, I want to congratulate you, Michael Kay, and Peter Rosenberg for being #1 in New York.
Yeah, it's a dream come true. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Don, can you talk a little bit about the chemistry that makes the Michael Kay Show so special?
Well, I think we had the luxury of time. You know, we were a startup station in September of 2001, and they put Michael and I together on July 15th of 2002. So we've been working together going on 18 years. So the chemistry really builds over time. And it's really Michael. I was an update guy when we first started and matured into co-host because he kind of allowed me to spread my wings. And, you know, it was his lack of ego to make that happen. If he's got an ego and doesn't want other people to talk, then we can't mature and allow that to happen. So it was the freedom that he gave me to express myself, and then over time it matured into what it is. Let's face it, we're in a business now where there's not a lot of time. You know, either you click or you don't. But because it was a startup station, they were patient with it, and we were given a lot of time to eventually grow into what we've become. So I think the chemistry was right away. But as far as it like working to where the audience noticed that chemistry, and I guess more important, management noticing the chemistry, allowed the time that we had allowed that to happen.
I know you grew up a fan of the New York Mets, and we're about the same age, so growing up a New York Mets fan in the early and mid-1970s was no easy task. What led you to be a Mets fan?
Well, it was my dad. My dad was a Brooklyn Dodger fan and then became a Met fan, obviously, when the Dodgers left, and then the Mets came in '62. And as a matter of fact, I inherited it from my dad. I was showing them on the Michael Kay Show early in the pandemic. He left me the first, it was 62, 63, 64, and 65. So those yearbooks, you know, so I remember going through them when I was like a little kid, learning about the history of the Mets. My first recollections of them being, you know, a guy that was born in '68 was probably those 76, 77 Mets, which were awful. You know, it was a really bad team. But, you know, you're a young kid, you don't care. That's your dad's team. And I remember sitting there, you know, with my dad watching the games, and it wasn't a matter of, you know, they're not winning. It was just that was our team. And I just fell in love with that the uniform and the colors and the way Shea Stadium looked on TV. My dad took me to my first game in 1972, so my recollections of it are really, really limited. And if it wasn't for Baseball Reference, I might not have any kind of recollection of what happened in the game at all. Ed Kranepool hit a couple of home runs, and I remember my dad pointing to Hank Aaron. It was a Mets-Braves game, and Hank wasn't playing, but I remember my dad pointing and saying, there's Hank Aaron, one of the greatest players of all time. And then going through Baseball Reference, kind of seeing some of the things that kind of went on in the game, kind of built the recollections up a little bit. So it was just it was like a love affair from the very beginning. My dad was a big Giant fan, too, football-wise, so that was just kind of where I was led. Those were the teams my dad loved, and then I in turn loved them, and they were both losing at the time, but it was great to eventually see them grow and become winners in the '80s, and knowing that I was a part of a foundation of losing to finally appreciate the winning.
You mentioned that going through all those hard years really made it even more enjoyable when the Mets did start winning, of course, winning it all in 1986. But personally for you, when was that turnaround? When did you know that the Mets were going to be something special in the 1980s?
I think what it really came together for me was Doc's rookie year in '84. I was 16 years old. So that's kind of when you're in life where you're starting to explore other things, and maybe your fandom, you kind of like lose it just a little bit. You start going out, you start dating. But I was completely sucked in because what Doc was doing was just incredible. And it seemed circumstances, at least my memory tells me that it seemed like Doc always seemed to pitch on a Friday at Shea Stadium. It just seemed the way it worked out. So I remember Friday nights getting excited, sitting with my dad, because you watch Doc Gooden the way you watched a Tyson fight. you watched it like waiting for something amazing to happen. Like you had to see it because this could be the night that he strikes out 20. This could be the night that he pitches a perfect game. You know, this could be the night where you're really going to regret if you miss it. And even though he had the better year in '85 when he won the Cy Young and had that incredible season, I remember '84 just this phenomenon of Doc Gooden pitching and just they just started to get good. You finally had a player that was your own. You know, you had Darryl, but like Doc was just something special. And Keith was from St. Louis, and Gary they got from Montreal. This is a homegrown guy that you just knew was really special. So even though '86 was the year for me, '84 just for some reason just became special. That the team was good, the games meant something, and you had a really special player in Doc Gooden going every 4 or 5 days and doing something incredible.
Well, Don, thank you so much for joining me right here on BT Talks Baseball. We'll talk to you soon.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
That was Don La Greca, co-host of the Michael K. Show, which is the #1 rated show and airs every afternoon on 98.7 ESPN Radio. Well, that'll bring us to our segment called There Used to Be a Ballpark. And today I want to talk about Connie Mack Stadium in Philadelphia. Before it was named Connie Mack Stadium, it was Shibe Park and was home to the Philadelphia Athletics of the American League, who were managed by Connie Mack. After the 1950 season, when Connie Mack retired after 50 years of being the Philadelphia Athletics manager, it was renamed Connie Mack Stadium and was by now home to the Philadelphia Phillies as well. In all, Connie Mack Stadium survived 62 seasons with the Philadelphia Athletics, who eventually moved on to Kansas City and then Oakland, and the Philadelphia Phillies. Of course, we're going to tie Connie Mack Stadium into our Mel's Memories today, because of course, Mel has a story about Connie Mack Stadium. Pops, what do you got?
We went to, I went with Melvin Klein and his father to Connie Mack Stadium the year the Giants moved to San Francisco, and it was the summer, and Melvin Klein and I were very proud because we thought we knew every single player on the Giants, and in the middle of the game, they announced that Leon Wagner was coming up to pinch hit, and we couldn't believe it because we couldn't believe that there was a player that we didn't know. And we found out later that this was his first at-bat. I looked back recently to make sure that my storytelling is true, and it was a Sunday, June 22nd, 1958, was Leon Wagner's first at-bat at the Philadelphia Phillies.
Well, that's a great memory of your time at Connie Mack Stadium. I know in an earlier Mel's Memories, you told us about that trip as well, and I know it means a lot to you. Thanks for sharing. Say hi to Mom. I love you.
Okay, it's my pleasure. Love you.
Well, that'll do it for another episode of BT Talks Baseball. I want to thank my guest, Don La Greca. Thanks to my dad for sharing his memory of Connie Mack Stadium. And, of course, thanks to you for tuning in. I leave you, as always, with the words of Tug McGraw, you gotta believe. Bye-bye, everybody. We'll see you next week. If you are interested in getting a signed copy of any one of Brett Topel's books, please visit us at www.topelmetsbook.com.